users. So what is Stork? It's a graphical management dashboard. The whole purpose of Stork is to make it easier for you to manage an open source Kia DHCP implementation. We did not develop this because, you know, we need to develop everything ourselves. I'm aware that you can use the CLI, you can use other open source tools like Nagios to manage Kia today. But there are some features that people needed that we couldn't manage with existing tools. So we looked around at some of the best open source tools out there today, and we are leveraging quite a few other open source projects, including Docker, PostgreSQL, the Grafana data visualizer, the Prometheus time series database, and the Angular web framework. Stork itself is MPL 2.0. The high-level architecture consists of a central web server and some agents that run on the Kia servers. This is a fairly new project. We've only been working on it for about 6 months, and we're doing monthly feature releases, so very rapid development. Today, Stork runs on Ubuntu, CentOS, and FreeBSD. And at the end of the presentation, we'll give you a link to a package repository for it. By the way, as we go through the presentation and the demo, if you have questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A panel or the chat panel. If we're able to, we may answer them in the chat or in the Q&A. Otherwise, we'll review the questions and answer them at the end. So the target use case for Stork is to provide a simple but a comprehensive monitoring and fault management platform for Kia. Nagios will let you monitor explicit faults, but a lot of people also need to see things that require a combination of information about the configuration as well as information about the current status. We did have a Google Summer of Code intern who created a graphical management dashboard for Kia called Interius. This was pretty popular, but it was a Google Summer of Code project, and the student moved on, and the project has not been maintained. So we wanted also to replace that for those users. We're also hoping eventually to expand this into an effective troubleshooting tool for Bind and Kia. Some of the requirements that we heard from Kia users, first of all, one of the first things people look for is a way to display their pool utilization and get alarms on thresholds. You know, we've even had support cases where customers were unclear about how many addresses they had configured in a pool. Certainly people have had issues where they ran out of disk space or they were having performance problems due to CPU utilization. So we want to be able to show platform information as well as application level information. A lot of people need to monitor their high availability pairs, and they'd also like some way to test the high availability to make sure that it's working. People want to monitor the ongoing lease activity. Obviously, if all of a sudden one of your servers is no longer handing out leases, you might wonder if you have a network issue. That means clients can't get to the server. People want to see how many active leases there are, how many devices are on their network. And people want to monitor timing issues and latency to see if there are possibly some impending failures or network problems. This is a list of the current features today. I'm not going to talk about this in detail because Tomek is going to show you these features when we do the demo, but this gives you an idea of what you can do today. Actually, I will mention the second thing there, configuration inspection. This is something, one of the reasons why we needed to create another application instead of just using something like Nagios. The other thing that is fairly different with Stork is we designed it from the beginning to be able to manage multiple servers at once, so that if you're providing a service which requires an HA pair or multiple servers, you can see the entire status. We have a long list of additional features we'd like to add. I just wanted to mention a few of the things we're going to be working on coming up. Some kind of a log viewer. We will probably start with simple log tailing with some kind of searching and filtering. Grafana has a very extensive alarms capability with the ability to send alarms to a Slack channel, to PagerDuty, put them in email, have a number of different alarm channels. So we'll probably leverage that existing capability in Grafana to raise alarms. There are some features that people would like to see that require that we collect and report current lease status information. So for instance, if we have that information, we can show configured host reservations by whether or not there is a device that's claimed the reservation or not. Once we have more features, we might need some more complex administrative roles and privileges. That's a little ways down the roadmap. It would be useful to be able to present some timings for events so that you can look at whether the time to get a lease is lengthening. There may be some kind of issue there. Another feature which I'm excited about that we don't have yet, but that we're going to be looking at is some ability to do something approximating a real user test, a simulated user test, so that we can have some kind of automated service probing. And then farther down the road, we would like to get into modifying configuration and providing some configuration controls. But our first goal is to have a fully functional dashboard and monitoring service first. So the high-level architecture, as I mentioned, you have agents. Sometimes we abbreviate this as STAG, STAG, the Stork agent. And those run on the Kia server, and they speak to a centralized Stork server. This is a web server. So the Stork agent is able to report information on the platform, the OS, the hardware, as well as it will discover applications running on the Kia server. It will discover Kia or bind services running there. That Stork agent is also sending data to a Prometheus time series database, which is then pushing the information to Grafana for visualization. So how do you deploy this? The Stork server can be a dedicated node, or you can co-locate it with Kia. At the end of the presentation, we'll give you a link to our package repository where we have packages. We typically run it on Ubuntu. I think that's probably what the demo is going to be running on. The Stork server, we're not committed to supporting every single operating system that you can run Kia on, but we do have the most popular operating systems supported. Prometheus and Grafana, you may want to run these, to monitor other services as well that you have. So they can be either on the Stork server or they can be on another machine. You just, in the Stork application, you configure the address for your Grafana server. The agent, though, you need to install that on every Kia server you want to manage. So the demo is going to be of a development snapshot version that Temec is running locally. We're generating traffic using perf DHCP. Perf DHCP is a open source utility. We use it for performance testing. You can use it for simulating clients. That's what we're doing with it today. And it's part of the Kia open source. So this is, there are a couple of references here. The first reference to gitlab.isc.org. This is the Stork project site. Go ahead and bookmark it if you like. This is where we are collecting requirements, bug reports. You can see the roadmap. You can see what issues we're working on, the milestones, and you can download directly from the repo if you like. When we do our monthly release, we post a new package at the second URL there, the Cloudsmith URL. That's the easiest way to install it. We have just set up a Stork users mailing list at list.isc.org. So we encourage you, if you do decide to run Stork, to go ahead and join that list. And if you are running Kia and you're not on the Kia users list, I highly recommend that as well. And again, there's a link to where the recording will be posted. It usually takes a day or so to post it. So that's it for the preamble. Just a minute, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and Tomek is going to start the demo. I just am sharing this picture that Tomek shared with me of a picture of a stork he caught himself. He caught the picture himself, not the stork. Anyway, so that's it. And now it's time for the demo.
Okay, hello, hello everyone. Before we get to the demo, there's one question, whether it would be possible to use tick stack instead of Prometheus, so we can collect the data with Telegraph. So I personally, don't have experience with Telegraph. I don't know how exactly the stack looks like. One of the features that Stork agent is providing is to export the data in Prometheus format. So if the tick and Telegraph, if they are protocol compatible with Prometheus, then you might try to use it. But if not, then it's not going to work. Okay, so with that out of the way, let me share the screen. I hope you can see it. So this
Yes.
is, yeah. Okay, so this is how Stork looks like. This is the latest development version. So technically it identifies itself as 0.6, but this is almost 0.7. So we are going to have 0.7 release this Friday. So it is like within 3 days, well, less than that. But anyway, we change the version at the very last moment. So this is technically, it still says that it's 0.6, but it's almost 0.7. So let me log in. Okay. So once you log in, Stork shows you that there is nothing configured. So this is basically a fresh installation. I didn't want to pre-configure anything, so I just wanted to walk you through the steps necessary. So, but before I go on the topic of monitoring Stork, let me divert slightly and mention that Stork has role-based access control. So by default, there is a single user configured admin, which has the super admin privileges. So that means that it can do everything, including configuring new users. But if you want to configure a new user, it can have one of two privileges levels, super admin and admin. Admin can do everything except adding new users. And in the near future, we will have a third level, which is read-only. So a user that will be able to look at statistics and look around, but don't configure anything or change anything. Okay, so now with that out of the way, so let me show you how to configure Kia. So this demo is running in Docker. We have a number of Docker containers with Kia and bind in different configurations with HA, with DHCP v6 and so on. So let me show you how to configure a machine. So when we go to machines, we see that there is nothing configured. I need to specify what is the name of the machine that I want to monitor. So on that machine, in this particular case, this is a Docker container. There is Kia running, and with Kia there is Stork agent deployed. So once I added the machine, Stork server connected to Stork agent, and Stork agent looked around in the system and found out that there's a Kia application running. So it was not told where the Kia is. It just looked around at running processes, available config files, and so on, and discovered that there's Kia. So as you can see, here we have the general information about the system, that what's the agent version, name of the host, information about the CPU, and what's the CPU utilization, memory, what's the sorry, what's the system, and even whether this is a bare metal or virtualization platform. And this is in this particular case, this is Docker. Okay, so anyway, let's go see what exactly is the has been detected about Kia and what are the problems. So as you can see here, this is the information about Kia services being detected. So one thing that was detected is control agent. So by default, Kia is shipped with control agent that has control sockets configured for all three components, for DHCP v4, DHCP v6, and DDNS. However, on this particular machine, there is only DHCP v4 running. So Stork detected that there are sockets configured for systems that for services that are not running, and flagged this as potential problem. Because Stork on its own cannot say whether this is intentional or there is really supposed to be a service that is not running. But anyway, this is one of the ways how Stork can flag potential problems. But anyway, let's take a look at what we have discovered about DHCP v4 service. So you have the basic information that the version is 173. You have the compilation options specified, also the hooks that are loaded. We have a note that high availability is not configured on this. I will be showing in a minute different setup when there is HA running. So we also have links to where we can get the information about host reservations, subnets, and share networks. So let me start with host reservations. So this is a panel where you can see the host reservation specified by this particular machine, but you can clear the filter, and then you should see the information in your whole network. So you can search for specific reservations, like as you know, Kia has support for multiple reservation types. You can reserve by MAC address, by client ID, by DUID, and so on. So let's, for example, search the reservations by client ID. So you can start typing client, and then you have those filtered out. You can also search for specific MAC address, so or a specific value in general. So you can filter by this, and then you see only those that are matching. Okay, so let's get back to machines, and let's see how we can configure a different Kia instance that is DHCP v6 only. Agent Kia 6. Okay, as you can see, the configuration method was exactly the same. I just pointed the server where the agent is running, and agent did the job. So it detected that here's Kia running with different configuration, and it seems that this one is slightly better configured. So we have control agent, but it has only one control socket configured, pointing only to DHCP v6. So there are no disambiguities here, and everything is reported as all clear. Okay, so One other thing that's worth mentioning is that we have very basic support for bind. So we can also configure Stork on a machine that is running bind, and we get some some basic information. We have the version, number of zones, and we have some insight into the cache hit ratio. But since this webinar is about Kia, I will not talk about bind. Okay, so now let's get into some more interesting aspects. Let me configure Kia with Kia that in a pair of Kia servers that are running in HA mode. So this is the first server and this is the second one. Okay. So, and here you can see that there is some extra information provided here. We have a pair of servers and right now they are both operating normally. So we have the information, this is the local server. So the status is online, it's working in hot standby. So you can also get extra information by hovering over different information expanded here. You can also very easily look at the second one. If you want to monitor it, click here and you are instantly switched to the second one. You can get back to the first one and see. Okay, so now let me shut down one of the servers to simulate a crash or a problem with a machine. Okay, so I now stopped the second server, and in a couple seconds, Stork will be able to detect it. So right now, oh, here it goes. So it says that the local server is still running, but the remote one, it's being offline. So within 10 seconds, and the situation is degrading because right now the surviving server detected that it tried to reestablish communication, but it was unsuccessful, so it went into partner down mode. So we have a warning that there is something clearly problematic here. The local server, it's still running and providing service, but the situation is not normal. So let me now start the server again. Okay, so I've started the server, and again, Stork is right now is configured to pull the status updates every 10 seconds. So there's a configuration parameter for this, and you can tweak it whether you want to have this more or less frequently. And as you can see, the server is going through different stages of recovery, and in a couple seconds it should get back to normal. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so this is how you can monitor the status of HA pair with Stork. Okay, so let me configure one more machine. Okay, so Kia has an ability to store host reservations in a database. So in this particular case, this is MySQL database. It proves to be a very popular feature. So anyway, now we have all the machines configured, so I can show you around a couple of things. So I previously showed you the host reservations. Now, if you take a look, here we have some extra information. So the initial couple reservations, they were retrieved from a config file. But Kia can also store them in a database, and those are retrieved using host commands. So, as I mentioned before, you can filter things easily here. Another thing that you can do is to look at subnets. So this is a list of subnets that we have in all the Kia instances configured in your network. So you can get extra information about the subnets. Right now, it's pretty boring because there is no traffic. If you want to, you can, as before, you can filter and search for specific subnets or pools or parts of the pool or name of the shared network. So to make the situation a bit more interesting, let me switch to a tool that we developed. So this is technically this is not part of Stork. This is part of the demo. It's a tool that allows to generate traffic. So okay, I'm just telling it to start simulating 10 clients per second in the first subnet. So it's running for a while. Let me stop and do something in the second network. Okay, so and now once I refresh, we have some pretty interesting information. So in the background, the traffic generator started sending traffic. And as you can see here, we have some mix of different pool utilizations. So in this subnet, the situation is pretty much under control. Here we crossed the first threshold, which is 80%. So in the current version, this is hard-coded, but in the future versions, this will be configurable. So, but for the time being, we have two thresholds, 80 and 90%. So if you cross 80%, there's a warning that hey, you will get out of addresses in the near future. And once you cross 90%, then there's the critical warning. So, okay, another thing that's that I wanted to show you is that we have shared networks. So this is more high-level view when you have multiple subnets grouped in shared networks. So, okay. So another thing that I wanted to mention is that we have a global search, which is pretty useful. For example, if you want to search for something that's that contains certain string, you can type it here, and then you will get information about where this specific string appears in your whole configuration. Okay, so we also have one other thing, which is Grafana support. So let me configure it real quick. Okay. So now you can see that there's a Grafana link. So, but before I will go to that specific link, let me show you the dashboard. So this is a top-level view of what is currently going on in your network. So we have a list of subnets. They are sorted by the pool utilization. So as you can see, some of them are already full, and on others we are running out of addresses. You also have the shared network statistics and general statistics. The same is for V6. And here you have a status of services running in your network. Okay, so let's see what we can find out in Grafana. Okay, so Stork agent works as one of the services that it provides is Prometheus Exporter. So it harvests the data from Bind or Kia and makes them available in Prometheus format. So Prometheus can get the data, and then Grafana is able to use it to get insight into what exactly is going on in your network. So when we provide a dashboard that comes with all the informations that you would typically expect. So you can get the total number of addresses, which is pretty boring. This is a constant value, but you have a number of addresses. You see the subnet utilization, a number of reclaimed addresses, and number of declines, and the declined reclaimed, which is a recovery after the addresses are declined and wait the probation period. So, and of course, this comes with all the configuration tweaks that you can do with Grafana. You can move the dashboards around if you don't want, if you don't like the default setup. You can hide the legends, add extra charts, and so on. So also, you have the capability here in the Stork dashboard. If you want to see information about just this specific subnet, you have a link here. So you click, and it moves you to a dashboard that is filtered to show only information about this specific subnet. So this is mostly it about Stork, except one final thing. So what I showed you, this is a graphical aspect of Stork, but underneath there is a RESTful API. So Stork is able to interact with systems that are automated. So we have REST API that is very well documented. So you have the information here, how to use it, what are the commands, and right now the list of commands, it's pretty basic, but as you may know from Kia, we are very keen on providing good API, so the number of commands and capabilities exposed through the API will grow over time. Okay, so I suppose this concludes our demo. So thanks a lot, and Vicky, back to you.
Okay, we do have some questions. You already, I think you already addressed the question about the tick stack instead of Prometheus, whether or not we can use Telegraph with it. There was a question, if you could go back to the, if you wouldn't mind going back and sharing your screen and going back to the API. There was a question, can Kia servers be configured in Stork via config files on the base system? For example, like with Ansible, or any way other than using the GUI? So I'm thinking in the API doc, it is, you may have the ability to tell it what servers to configure.
Hold on. Yeah, so right now Stork is, I would say, a read-only dashboard. So it allows you to inspect things, and it can report various things, but it doesn't let you to change any configuration. So right now this is, I would say, read-only mode. So
oh, I think what this meant was, can you configure the machines to be monitored?
Yeah, so, okay, basically you can deploy a Stork agent anywhere, even on machines that don't run Kia or Bind, and they will only provide basic information about the system itself. Was this the question?
No, I'm actually looking at that under services. It says post machines, add a new machine. I think what he's asking is,
Okay,
This
no,
is from
no.
Eric. If you can instruct Stork on what machines to monitor. So
Okay,
maybe you're
yeah.
using Ansible to deploy new DHCP servers. Could you
Okay,
add
yeah.
a thing
Okay,
in there?
so yes, in this, yes, you can. So this is basically what happens when you use the user interface and click add new machine. So there's this exact API is used to add new machine to the Stork system. So yes, you can use it.
Okay, we have a question from Alexander. Will future versions support MySQL as a database for the Stork server?
I'm sorry, no. This is one of the hard lessons that we learned when we were developing Kia, is that we started too early to support the databases. So I'm not sure if you remember, but a long time ago, Kia had only memfile support. Once we added MySQL, there was very quickly a request, hey, can you add Postgres? And we said, yes, we can. And then there was Cassandra. And after that, people were requesting SQLite, Redis, and many other databases. So, and we said, okay, no, this is way too much. And maintaining different backends, it's actually pretty complicated, because every single functionality that we're adding requires effectively implementing the same feature several times. So maybe in the far future, maybe there will be support for one more database, but for the time being, it's Postgres only.
If someone installs from the package, does that take care of the Postgres install for them?
No, you have to configure Postgres database, just empty database. Stork server, once it starts, it has a migration system. So the only thing you need to configure, and by the way, this is described in the, let me open this Stork. Okay, so this is basically what you need to do. It's to create create the user, create the database, grant the privileges, and install a PG crypto extension. And once you do this, there is no database schema setup. So Stork server will take care of this on its own during first start. So there's a mechanism that Stork server does migrations, and it starts from database version 0, which is empty database.
Okay, we have another user, Bjorn, who is asking if we're going to be providing a Docker image for Stork. I know you've answered this in the chat, but just like give you a chance to speak to it.
Okay, so right now you can hold on. Okay, here it is. So right now we have an environment that actually the whole demo was running in Docker. So the only thing that you need to do to set up an environment like I showed you is to get the sources, have the dependencies, and then type rake docker app. So it will build the server and several key instances and in Docker containers and start them up. So this is not really intended for production environment, because most likely you don't need 6 different key instances configured in some strange ways. But in general, you can take a look at the sources and see how this is put in the container. But right now, we also provide images, native packages. So we have RPM and dep packages, and it's very easy to install them on containers.
So since we're on the topic, and I'm fairly sure that the same user would like to see a Docker container for Kia itself, do you just want to speak to the issue with that?
Okay, so we started providing packages for Kia, I think in 1.5, and now we are providing them routinely for every release. So Docker images are somewhere down the road, so we will provide them at some not so distant future, but I don't want to give specific specific dates, but it's something that we are looking at.
One of the issues with, if I could just interject, one of the issues with providing Docker containers, of course, is that then, you know, we're a little bit concerned about our responsibility for all of the vulnerabilities that might be present in the image due to, you know, operating system issues. And so it's a lot more overhead for us to manage that and look into that. So we have a couple of more questions that are effectively feature requests. So Eric is asking about other authentication. Right now we're using a local user name and password file. He's asking, is there LDAP or SAML2 support? And Eric, one thing I would encourage you and anyone else with feature requests, please consider navigating over to our GitLab site and entering a request for it, because we certainly can envision tons of things that people would like, but it's really helpful for us to know for how many users, you know, is this important. And probably, you know, having some kind of federated authentication or off-server authentication, you know, it's going to be more important the more administrative users you have. But if there's only a couple of users, might not be quite as important. But anyway, did you want to say anything about that, Tomek?
No, except maybe one small correction. You said that the users are stored in a local file. That's incorrect. They are kept in a Postgres database.
Oh, okay, sorry.
But yes, I completely agree. It would be great if you could open a feature request. Obviously, no promises that we will get to it, but this is a good indication for us that there are people involved in this, and we keep all the tickets open, so it's publicly visible by other people, and the more users requesting something, it's a good indication for us that this should be important.
Okay, we have another feature request / question, and I did not even tell him to ask this, but Alexander's asking, are we planning in the future to have Stork not only monitor, but also manage configuration for Kia machines?
Yes, but this is not something that will come in very soon. And the reason is that there are a lot of failure modes and complicated changes that could happen, and very different configuration changes. Some people are adding host reservations frequently, adding subnets. You can expand subnet and do a lot of different things. So it's very complicated. So before we get to configuration changes themselves, we want to focus on monitoring for the time being.
Yeah, you know, it can be a big can of worms doing configuration changes. So we have a request from Andreas. If there's time left, are you able to show what Stork can do with bind? Do you have that set up on your machine?
Okay, so I see that before I get to bind, there's a question from Stefan. What is the collection frequency for Stork? Is it possible to collect the data every second? So this is configurable, and for the demo, I configured everything for 10 seconds, which is nice because I can see the changes very rapidly. There is a trade-off. So the more frequently Stork gets the information, Stork is using the Kia API to retrieve the information. If your configuration is large and the data is retrieved, there is some impact. It's not huge, but depending on how saturated is your system, this might be a problem or not. But anyway, this is configurable, and you can, yes, so the smaller value we can configure here is 1 second. Okay, and regarding bind, regarding bind, we don't have that much,
yeah, so we weren't actually planning to demo it at the moment, Andreas. So for bind, I think most bind users today have some type of Nagios monitoring set up, and I think Grafana is also quite popular. The thing that we're most focused on for bind is really troubleshooting. And so the first thing that we're looking at is resolver troubleshooting, providing a little bit more visibility into what is in the cache, the aging of things in the cache. That's what we're working on. Mm-hmm. But there's, we have a number of use cases, mostly related to troubleshooting, and some of them are performance related. So one thing that is hard to do with just a Nagios setup with bind is to monitor the platform as well as the application. And the reason for the focus on the resolver and the cache is that, you know, we do have data in bind that is not, not all the data that's available in bind is currently expressed in metrics, and there are so many metrics. So he's actually showing you right now that at the moment we're reporting the OS, the version, the uptime, the number of zones, and the cache hit ratio. We don't really, as you probably know, to demo a resolver requires a fair amount of setup. So.
Okay, so one other thing that we're providing is a dashboard for Grafana. I will not pretend that I'm an expert on this one, but here we have some basic information about the resource usage, like CPU time, number of file descriptors, and so on. We have some insight into the number of queries and what type of queries and responses you get. We also have some insight into the cache, especially what's the hit ratio, what are the misses and hits. So, but this is a very basic setup. So we have a single server and basically dig and flamethrower sending queries to a single server. So it's very basic. So the charts are not that interesting. And we have some insight into the DNSSEC validation. So that's pretty much it, what we have on the bind side. So right now, Stork is very heavily focusing on Kia because we feel that there are so many different tools available on the market for bind. We know that there is some work to be done, and there is room for one more product there. But on the other hand, for Kia, there is almost nothing. So we decided to heavily focus on Kia, but keep in mind that sometime in the future we'll want to treat bind and Kia on equal footing.
Yeah, I appreciate the question about bind. The requirements for monitoring bind really are at a different order of magnitude. Most of the people deploying Kia only have a handful of servers, but it's very common to have 40 bind servers, or many more than that. So, and there's just probably 2 orders of magnitude more traffic, typically in a bind DNS environment. So we did have to try to design a solution that was going to be able to span both Kia and Bind. Any more questions? I think we've answered everything that has been posed so far. Just going to take one more check. Okay, I don't see any more questions. So I want to thank you very much, Tomek. This was a great demo and very effectively illustrated what we have in Stork. If anybody's interested in trying it, let me just go back and once again share the slide with the key links. And that's it for our presentation today. Thank you all for joining us.